Senate Bill 8 by Senator Liu, an act relating to tobacco use programs.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this bill requires all school districts and charter schools to be tobacco-free. Under current law, the California Department of Education provides grants for anti-tobacco education programs to reduce the number of pupils who begin to use tobacco and continue to use tobacco. California voters in 1988 passed Proposition 99, which increased the tax on each pack of cigarettes by 25 cents. The Annual Budget Act appropriates these funds for several purposes, including the tobacco use prevention and education programs in schools. School districts that receive these competitive grants must develop policies to ban tobacco use on school property, and they must post a tobacco use is prohibited sign. According to CDE, all 58 of the county offices of education and over 75% of school districts are certified tobacco-free. The legislature should make it clear this should become a standard for all schools, including charter schools. This bill requires all public school districts and charter schools to develop a tobacco ban policy and post signs at the entrance to school grounds, regardless of whether the school receives Prop 99 funding. This bill adds language to the Health and Safety Code to expand the definition of tobacco products to include electronic cigarettes, vaping devices, snuff, chew, and other forms of smokeless tobacco. A tobacco-free school district policy often gives school employees the added motivation needed to cut down tobacco use or quit altogether, and I ask for your support on this bill.
Thank you, Senator Liu. Members, any debate or discussion? Any debate or discussion? Senator Anderson.
Members, I don't want to encourage youth to smoke cigarettes or take on any other tobacco products, but the fact of the matter is many of our kids at risk are those very kids that get involved with tobacco early. I'm concerned that we're working very hard to keep them in school, and a bill like this could push them out of school. I think that if we want to pursue this, we need to put more thought into education, but to simply ban it we may have a ripple effect that leads to an outcome that we don't want. Having somebody who smokes cigarettes, who's uneducated and can't get a job is not the direction that we need to be going in. I urge a no vote.
Members, any further debate or discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, please call the roll. Or excuse me, Senator Liu, would you like to close?
Simply ask for your aye vote.
Okay, great. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? Bell? Aye. Berryhill? No. Block? Cannella? Aye. De Leon? Aye. Fuller? No. Gaines?
No.
No. Galgiani? Aye. Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Hueso? Huff? Jackson? Aye. Lara? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leyva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Aye. Runner? Stone? No. Vidak? No. Wachowski? Aye. Wolk.
Senator Liu moves the call. I think we'll have an opportunity for everybody to vote. We're just moving the call. Okay, members, we will move back now to file item 8, Senator Leno. Secretary, please read.
Senate Bill 5 by Senator Leno, an act relating to electronic cigarettes.
Senator Leno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is the last of the package of these tobacco bills, and I just have to say, I've been a little surprised by the way the votes have fallen. If we back up from the entire package for just a minute, we're doing these bills for a specific reason. It's about public health. We're at the lip of another public health crisis. The Bee just editorialized the other day appropriately that there's this new phenomenon of those who have become addicted to prescription opiates are now moving to heroin, and heroin overdoses have quadrupled over the past 10 years. That's a public health crisis. 12,000 Americans have died from heroin overdose in the past year. But as Senator McGuire pointed out, almost 500,000 Americans die each year as a result of tobacco product use. And apparently, we just shrug our shoulders and think we can live with 500,000 people dying from tobacco use. That's why we're doing these bills, to see if we can protect a new generation from getting yet addicted to the neurotoxin of nicotine. It's not an exercise, it's not for any reason other than to protect the public health that's costing taxpayers tens of billions of dollars annually to mitigate. So I just share that with you as I present a bill which we have already debated on this floor. And it will merely regulate e-cigarettes as a tobacco product, and I'll substantiate that in a moment. So it will fall under our smoke-free law, our licensing law, and our Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Act, which is known as the STAKE Act. The difference between this bill and the earlier version is that it also requires that e-cigarette packaging be child-resistant, which is an issue that Senator Hill very admirably put into an earlier bill of his. So why should e-cigarettes be regulated as a tobacco product? Well, you don't have to take it from me, but you can take it from the Food and Drug Administration's pending regulations, the World Health Organization, the Centers for Disease Control, the California Department of Public Health, and recognize that under federal law, which defines a tobacco product as a product designed for human consumption, which is of or derived from the tobacco plant. E-cigarettes contain nicotine. Nicotine comes from one place on earth, the tobacco plant. It is a tobacco product. Many of the e-cigarettes advertise on their website that they are an innovative digital tobacco product. So they recognize themselves that it is a tobacco product that contains nicotine. This is especially important because the fastest growing segment of the e-cigarette industry is middle and high school students. Middle and high school students who have not yet smoked a traditional cigarette are smoking e-cigarettes, using e-cigarettes. The California Department of Public Health has identified 10 Prop 65 carcinogens in the aerosol that is emitted when using an e-cigarette. So these are dangerous to those who are experiencing the emissions. That's why we want to put it under our smoke-free law. I don't need to explain further why we need to impose the Stop Tobacco Access to Kids Enforcement Act, because nicotine, a neurotoxin, affects the brain development of the children who are using them. And those who use these products in their early life are by far more likely to continue their nicotine use throughout their lifetime. So this is a public health crisis we're trying to prevent from going any further. Wells Fargo has estimated that by the end of the decade, 75% of this growing e-cigarette industry will be owned by the 3 largest tobacco companies. They clearly see their future in e-cigarettes. What was a billion-dollar industry just a couple years ago is now $3.5 billion industry, will probably grow to $10 billion in the years to come. Big Tobacco would like to believe they have found their holy grail, which is a safer delivery system of their toxic nicotine. We heard that from them how many decades ago when they said filtered cigarettes was the safer way to get your nicotine. We learned only so many years later that they knew all along how dangerous their safe filtered cigarettes were. So I hope you'll consider the reasonable approach. For those who came to our multiple committee hearings from our districts to say how this will kill their vape shops, how this will kill jobs in their small businesses, not true. 178 cities and counties in California already have local ordinances which do what this bill would do. So half of the population of California is already living with e-cigarettes regulated as tobacco products, and vape shops are thriving and the industry is growing. This is not a ban. Those who believe that their life is better because they're now getting their nicotine from e-cigarettes rather than traditional cigarettes will continue to use e-cigarettes. And bless their hearts, no one's going to stop them. And these small businesses and their vape shops, nothing will stop them. It will merely protect a next generation from becoming addicted to nicotine and will save taxpayers, whom we often claim to be so protective of, as we should be, will save tens of billions of dollars of wasted money to save the lives of those whose lives we could save today with an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Leno. Members, any debate or discussion? Senator Stone.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. There's not a lot of issues that I can say that I agree with my colleague and friend from San Francisco. But I do stand in support of this bill. And there are some names I'd like to mention that are probably meaningless to this floor. Charlene Friedman, my mother. Virginia Friedman, my grandmother. Both of them died from the sequelae of cancer of the lung. My friend Alan Kleinberg, a jeweler. My friend Nacho, a landscaper, dropped dead at 50 years old at a property adjacent to mine in the beautiful Temecula wine country. And I remember as a child driving to my grandparents' house from our home in Orange County and hearing on the news that a gentleman by the name of Nat King Cole died. And it said that he died from lung cancer from cigarette smoking. And I heard that as my mother was driving the car and smoking. And I said to my mother at a very young age, I said, Mom, smoking kills. Why are you smoking? And she goes, well, it's a horrible habit. It's very hard to break. So what my relatives didn't have at the time that they became addicted to smoking when it was culturally acceptable, it was very in vogue to smoke at that time. No one knew about the dangers of cigarette smoke and the emphysema that it causes, the asthma that it causes, and more devastatingly, the cancer that it causes. Even with the warnings that we put on cigarette cartons every day that smoking is hazardous to your health, it will cause cancer, we still have millions of people, 40 million in the United States, that are still addicted to tobacco. Nationwide, more than 20 million adults, not even counting the children, that's 1 in 10 adults in this country, have tried e-cigarettes. And e-cigarette companies have been able to pander the nicotine products without the prohibitions that have been placed on tobacco companies, where you don't see their advertisements on television, radio, or billboards. And we're seeing celebrities now sensationalizing and looking cool, advertising vaping products. And don't think for a moment that they're not being marketed to our children with such flavors as cotton candy, tutti frutti. They're going after kids. And that's where I have to draw the line from being a healthcare professional and being a politician. After years with the help of the American Lung Association, the American Cancer Society, and educating people about the morbidity and mortality associated with cigarette smoking, we are beginning to see yet a new generation of nicotine addiction via vaping that I believe, as many do, can be a gateway to getting back to traditional smoking of cigarettes. And we made a lot of progress, my friends. From 1965 to 2011, we saw a decline in tobacco use among adults and high school students from 42.5% to 18.5% due to advertising bans and strong education programs. All that progress potentially is going to be reduced. As we've heard, tobacco use remains the largest preventable cause of disease and premature death in the United States, yet more than 45 million Americans, as I said before, are still addicted to these products. Unfortunately, only 4 to 7% of those people that have the habit can quit without some type of nicotine replacement medication or vaping. So I do say that I think vaping is a tool that can potentially help one stop smoking, but it is not without risk. The World Health Organization issued a report that said it issued grave concerns over the growing role of multinational tobacco companies, warning that they could turn e-cigarettes into a gateway for a new generation of smokers at a time when the decades-long public health campaign has successfully reduced smoking rates in the United States and other developed countries. Also, the Centers for Disease Control in 2014 reported that more than 250,000 youth who have never smoked a cigarette used e-cigarettes in 2013, 3 times the number that was used in 2011. I'm very pleased that in the new legislation that nicotine containers now will be child-resistant, child-proof, because there have been numerous reports of young children and infants being taken to emergency rooms that die from nicotine toxicity because these solutions are concentrated. I want to thank Senator Hill for bringing that forward in his original bill. My friends, there are 466 brands, there are 7,764 flavors, and it's a $7 billion industry now in the United States. And we don't even know, when you get these bottles, truly how much nicotine is in those products, and we're talking about something that can be potentially very dangerous. But again, it took decades for us to understand the hazards of cigarette smoke that my mother and my grandmother didn't have the opportunity to embrace. And today we have these nicotine devices that aerosolize nicotine as well as other excipient ingredients that, when aerosolized and heated up, produce potentially carcinogenic materials. The bottom line is that we have to do a lot more studies to positively say that the formaldehyde that's created, the acetaldehyde that's created, the acrolein that's created is in an abundance enough to cause cancer. However, there are studies that have been underway. One at UCLA by Dr. Steve DeBonnet, a UCLA pulmonologist who actually took cells from the bronchiole and put them in Petri dishes and exposed those cells, those human cells, to tobacco smoke. And then he exposed those cells to vapor. And the results were frightening. The cells that were there, that were exposed to smoke, had a higher propensity, a higher rate of division. And when cells uncontrollably divide fast, that's what is called tumors. And he got the same results from the vaping, which leads us to believe that there is potentially a link to nicotine and all the aerosolized ingredients that haven't been tested to causing potentially morbidity and mortality. We're putting those warning signs out there today so that we can protect a younger generation from not having the demise of my prior generations. As a pharmacist, I can tell you we studied nicotine pharmacology, and we know for sure that it increases blood pressure, it increases heart rate, it increases hardening of the arteries. This is all scientific. It increases cholesterol in the blood. Needless to say, nicotine is not the safest chemical that's out there. And there is nicotine in other foods. You can find it in eggplant, but there is no concentration as high as you find in tobacco, and that's where nicotine that goes into these bottles comes from. And nicotine is very addictive. It is just addictive as heroin or cocaine, and this is why it is so difficult for people to abate these sensations. The CDC reports as a percentage of United States middle and high school students who use e-cigarettes more than doubled in 2011 and 12, from 4.7 to 10%. In 2012, more than 1.78 million middle school and high school students nationwide tried e-cigarettes. It's probably larger today with the sensationalistic advertising that we see. My friends, we need to get ahead of this public safety nightmare. We need stronger education, and I believe that we should be classifying these devices, nicotine in these bottles, in the same category as tobacco products, the place where nicotine is originated from. Let's not repeat history. Let's put information out there, and let's protect our kids and make sure they know the hazards. They know the possibility of death in getting addicted to this horrific chemical, to these horrific products that can severely diminish one's quality of life. I urge you to please vote for this bill. Please vote aye.
Thank you, Senator Stone. Members, any further discussion or debate? Seeing none, Senator Leno, would you like to close?
Let me thank my colleague for his thoughtful comments. Also want to thank our sponsors, the American Cancer Society, the Lung Association, the Heart Association, all of the health advocacy groups who have universally come to the support of this bill, including the California Medical Association, the California Dental Association, First Five California. The list is very long. I ask for your aye vote.
Secretary, we are at this point going to move the call. Senator Leno. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, let's get this in the right order. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Aye. Anderson? No. Bates? No. Bell? Berryhill? No. Block? Aye. Canella? No. De Leon? Fuller? No. Gaines?
No.
No. Galgiani? Glazer? Aye. Hall? Aye. Hancock? Aye. Hernandez? Aye. Hertzberg? Aye. Hill? Aye. Wesso? Aye. Huff? Jackson? Aye. Lada? Aye. Leno? Aye. Leva? Aye. Liu? Aye. McGuire? Aye. Mendoza? Aye. Mitchell? Aye. Monning? Aye. Morlock? No. Morrell? No. Wynn? No. Nielsen? No. Pan? Aye. Pavley? Aye. Roth? Aye. Runner? Stone? Aye. Vidak? No. Wykowski? Aye. Wolk? Bill, aye.
Senator Leno moves the call. Members, at this time, the second extraordinary session will stand in recess, and the regular session will be reconvened. We will now move to Assembly third reading, file item 137. And Senator Vidak, excuse me, it's not. Senator Hill, are you prepared to bring this measure forward? Pass on file. Okay, members will now move to file item 141. Senator Allen, you prepared to bring this measure forward?